Yes. What is up, Finn fans? You might be saying to yourself, what are you talking about with yes? Well, I'm talking about the title of the video. Is the Miami Dolphins season over? Yeah. Now, technically, and I mean like with the most emphasis on the technically, no. You'll still see them in the hunt. You got the Dolphins and the Bengals and the Colts all have the same record. Because, of course, everything that needed to happen yesterday for the Colts to have an advantage did happen. Because if the Dolphins would have beat the Texans, they would have been moved up over the Indianapolis Colts. But, of course, they didn't. They would need like an utter collapse from the Chargers. And for me, that seems like the only possible way they get into the playoffs is like the Colts need to lose one more. The Dolphins need to win out, and the Chargers need to lose, like, I think 2 more. Then, I'm not even going to go into that whole... I'm going to go into the pro football because we're going to look at, essentially, the draft picks because that's where it really matters. But no, man, the season's over. In this video, I'm not going to sit here and talk about if, ands, or buts. I've been telling you guys since they lost to the Buffalo Bills that they're not making the playoffs. And they went on a winning streak. So a lot of people wanted to know, and I showed, and I showed how this and that could happen. But I also emphasized consistently that they have to win out. I don't think they're going to win out, but they have to win out. And unfortunately they did. They didn't win out. So again, we're at a situation where it's just the season's over. The season's over. You need to now beat the 49ers at home. You need to beat the Cleveland Browns in the cold. You need to beat the Jets in New Jersey. And then you need to pray that things are going to fall apart for the Chargers. And the Colts are going to lose to a team they shouldn't lose. And then you're going to get into the playoffs. They're not gonna. And you're going to face a team better than the Houston Texans. You're going to face a team better than the Green Bay Packers. You're going to probably face the Buffalo Bills, who just beat the Lions, or you're going to face the Steelers, or you're going to face the Chiefs if that somehow happens, which I doubt. They're probably going to lock up the number 1 seed. You're going to get destroyed. The season's over. So now is the point where we talk about, now obviously I'm going to still do the next 3 games. I'm going to break down the film because I'm breaking down the film tomorrow. We're going to look at the offensive line. We're going to look at the interceptions from Tua. We're going to look at where we could have went better. I'm going to do it every week. I'm not going to stop. But we're now in the process of now looking and seeing how things pan out for the draft. That's where I'm at mentally. Because what I saw from the Dolphins versus the Houston Texans yesterday made me realize that this team, for one, it made me realize this team isn't ready and they haven't been ready. But I've always known that this team was built horribly. It was built horribly. They focused too much on the wrong pieces of this team when they should have been focusing on the trenches. And again, if you've been subscribed to me since jump, I've been telling you that if the Miami Dolphins have a top 5, and I even said it this way too, because I always catch myself. If the Miami Dolphins have a top 10 to top 15, give me 15 to 10 offensive line and defensive line, they will win the division. Because a top 15 offensive line is going to protect your quarterback and you're going to have a run game. And a top 15 defensive line is going to stop the run and going to get after the quarterback. That's how you win football games. And look at the Dolphins' offense and defensive line. Just look at it. Hot garbage, not good enough. And look where we're at. So Adam Beasley had a fantastic article that I want to go over. Then I'm going to look at the team a little bit more. I'm going to look at players because now it's at the point where it's like you have a slim to none chance. I think they have like less than 5% chance. Some of these guys are going to make business decisions, player-wise. So real quick, let's look at Adam Beasley's article. He says the Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross must set loyalties aside, fire Chris Grier. He made this an hour after the game ended. Win or lose, Stephen Ross doesn't meet with reporters after Miami Dolphin games, or really ever. So we don't know for certain how he experienced yet another late season heartbreaking Sunday. But our guess is he's equally parts angry and exasperated, nice word, after Miami's fumbling 20-12 loss to the Houston Texans that effectively ended any hope of a third consecutive playoff appearance. Is he mad enough to fire general manager Chris Grier? That's unknown, but inflamed passion should have nothing to do with it. The case to move on from Grier after a long run with the Dolphins is totally logical. So he says, will Miami Dolphins Stephen Ross fire Chris Grier? It's not like Ross hasn't been patient. Grier started with the Miami Dolphins scouting in 2000. Since then, they've gone 194 and 207 with a negative 480 point differential and won one playoff game in 7 appearances. Now, I'm not going to put all that on Chris Grier. You know, I really start to judge Chris Grier. You could start him at 2016, even though he was in this like trifecta of stupid. I kind of really give him the you need to go starting at 2019. Now, we don't blame Grier for the decision making by Spillman or Mueller or Jeff Ireland, Dennis Hickey, or Mike Tannenbaum. There you go. I agree. But we do blame Grier for the decisions made by Chris Grier. He had total control of the Miami Dolphins roster since 2019. Me and Adam are on the same page. And that time, the Dolphins are 50-47 with an 87-point differential and 0-2 in the playoffs. The Dolphins are not and have not been good enough for many reasons. But reason number one is pretty consistent. Their roster is not good enough. It wasn't nearly good enough Sunday because of decisions Chris Grier made. He decided before the season to make Tua Tagovailoa the 5th highest paid quarterback in NFL history. I will talk about that in a second. Tua on Sunday turned the ball over 4 times and averaged a mere 4.9 dyslexia yards per pass attempt to fall to 6-14 with 31 touchdowns and 19 interceptions against teams with winning records in the Mike McDaniel era. Grier decided to not only trade 5 draft picks, including for a first rounder to acquire wide receiver Tyreek Hill, he has since paid him roughly $80 million with another $27.7 million fully guaranteed in 2025. Hill on Sunday was the same as he's been in most of the Dolphins' big games, invisible. He had 2 catches for 36 yards and 7 targets and was the intended receiver for all 3 of Tua's interceptions. Now, I will say this, and we will look at the film tomorrow. The first 2 interceptions, it was Tua's fault. He threw it in the horrible spots, and then that last interception, a lot of people, you know, they still framed it, and you see Tyreek Hill with the ball in his hand, so obviously he should have caught it. But why are you throwing that type of pass, or if it wasn't a 50-50 ball, it was an underthrown pass to a wide receiver that's under 6 foot? Like, that shouldn't have been the play. Hill on Sunday was the same. Okay. Grier teased reporters who were worried about the quality of the offensive line before the season. On Sunday, the Dolphins had 1 starting caliber lineman on the field because of a decision Grier made. The Dolphins allowed 3 sacks, including a strip sack, 17 pressures, 10.1% pressure rate, and 6 tackles for loss and committed 6 penalties, 4 enforced. Ross is willing to pay any price to produce a winner. Resources aren't the issue in Miami. The Dolphins, since Grier took over, have spent more than $1 billion on players and tens of millions more to build Miami's best-in-class training facility. It hasn't mattered. Ross has done his part. Grier has not. 1,000%. I actually have a ton of stats here that I'm going to talk about when it comes to in Grier's tenure as the GM, all alone, heir apparent, has control, what he has done and what has gone wrong, essentially. And unless he wants to be right back in the same position again in 12 months, Ross needs to move on from Grier once and for all. Certainly, there are personal considerations for Ross. He has loyal loyally stood by Greer through all these years of mediocrity because he likes him and he believes in him. Ross, take that and throw it in the trash. I was going to say something meaner, but that doesn't matter, man. But this is the bottom line business. And the bottom line is clear. Greer has fallen short time and again. The Dolphins were the best of mediocre teams in 2022 and 2023, but aren't even that anymore. No, they suck. They are 6-8 this year, and in what's at best their third worst division in football. Tough decisions looming for the Dolphins. They have the NFL's sixth oldest roster. That's sad. They have the sixth smallest amount of projected cap space in football next year, $12.6 billion. They need to rebuild their offensive line and safety position. They need to figure out what to do with Hill, Bradley Chubb, Teron Armstead, and Jalen Phillips. And they need to decide if McDaniel, who's now 6-17 against teams with winning records in his 3 years as a head coach, including 3-14 on the road, is part of the path forward. In other words, Dolphins general manager has a big job ahead of him. Greer has proven during his quarter century in Miami that he is not the right man for it. Couldn't have said it better myself, Adam Beasley, even though I did say it and then I jumped. I said it and then I was like, oh, you agree with me. 100%. 100 million%. Chris Greer's got to go. And I'm going to give you some things. I'm going to give you some things to now I made a whole video about this, but it's going to be quick. It's not, I'll talk about Greer for like 3 minutes, not even. Greer had 39 total draft picks over the past 6 years. 7 of them were first round picks. I'm going to say that one more time. 6 years of drafts. 7 of them are first round picks. 6 of them were second round picks. 39 total draft picks. He has spent a total of $674 million in free agency. Now, in 2024, he spent $115 million, which was 16th ranked. In 2023, he spent $57 million, which was 20th ranked. In 2022, he spent $173 million, which was 3rd ranked. That was Mike McDaniel's first year. 2021, he spent $55 million, which was 21st ranked. 2020, the big year where we had 3 first rounders, 2 second rounders. He spent $237 million in free agent money, which was first in the NFL. How many of those 2020 free agents are still on the team? Like, gotta go. And you might say, well, dog, that's not really fair to blame Chris Greer because you got to think he needs to, Mike McDaniel and Brian Flores, he's just shopping. They got to use the groceries. Or you'll say, hey, dog, that's not fair. Mike McDaniel and Brian Flores wanted these players. Chris Greer is the type of GM that gets the players that these coaches wanted. Knock, knock. Who's there? Who hired Mike McDaniel and Brian Flores? Chris Greer. Time to move on. It's time. The mediocrity needs to stop. And I have videos for this offseason on what we can do with this roster, how to clear cap space, how to build it properly. And I do it every year. Every year I give you guys the cap space, how we can clear cap space, which they somewhat do, and then who to focus on. And I even tell you, hey, look at this guy. He's not going to cost a lot of money. And then the Miami Dolphins are like, no, the offensive line's not important. And then that guy ends up signing a contract for like $8 million. And he ends up being really good. And we go out and spend $12 million on a guy who's not really good. And it drives me bananas. And you know why that is? Because Chris Greer sucks. So it's time to move on from Chris Greer. But again, I made a whole video about this. I've been talking about this since week 4. This is nothing new. But after this game that we saw yesterday, it really should put a stamp on it. And Stephen Ross, like Adam Beasley said, needs to get his head out of his tuchus and make the right decision for the organization. Because if you want to win And if you want to turn this around, you don't want to be part of another tear down rebuild, you got to get rid of Chris Greer, because you bring in a competent, good GM that knows what he's doing and knows how to look for talent. That's the biggest thing. I was part of it, where I was excited with the scouts and, the guys that Greer brought in, from the Raiders and the Chiefs to help him find the talent. He found little dribbles of talent here and there. I'm not going to say all of his draft picks sucked and all of his signings sucked. But if it's a big old turd and you randomly put pieces of candy in it, you still got a big old turd in your hand. The Brewers and the Calais Campbells but then at the end of the day, they end up not being here anymore. Deshaun Elliott, good finding, gone. Oh, Andrew Van Ginkel, good draft pick, gone. Oh, look at this guy, it's a good signing. Look how well he's doing. He's gone. So it don't matter. See you later. Gotta go. So Chris Greer needs to be fired. Now you're thinking, Mike McDaniel. What do you do with Mike McDaniel? I don't care. Let the new GM come in and decide. Have Mike McDaniel, and I've been saying this. It's like, why does it have to get to this point? Why does it have to get to a point where we're miserable? You know what I'm saying? Like, why does it have to get to a point where we're like fighting with the fans are like arguing with each other and they're butting heads with each other? Why does it have to get to this point for such a drastic move to have to be made? It should have got to this point when we were 2-6. And like I said, when we hit 2-6, and I think that's when we lost to Buffalo, you need to fire Chris Greer. You need to go out and fight. Like the Jets, guess who the Jets are interviewing? Louis Riddick. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a fantastic GM, but they're being proactive. There's 3 games left in the season, and they're going out and finding a GM. I've been saying since the Bills game, you need to fire Chris Greer, go out and get yourself a GM, have him sit back and watch Mike McDaniel, and literally have Mike McDaniel coach for his job. I've been saying that. And now we're at the point, again, we're talking Mike McDaniel, where go out and get a GM regardless. Iridocyclitis. Because people say irregardless, which isn't a word. Regardless, you need to fire Chris Greer. Point blank. Hopefully today I'm making a video later today where he is fired. If not, they're going to wait till the end of the season and it's just going to be dragged on and I'm going to lose my mind because there's going to be this little nagging piece at the back of my head like they're not going to fire him. They're not going to fire him. And have Mike McDaniel coach for his job these last 3 weeks. Because these last 3 weeks are games they could win. You could beat the 49ers. They're banged up. They ain't good. You could beat the Browns. They're not good. You could beat the Jets. You did it already. Have Mike McDaniel coach for his job. But you know what? And I'm telling you this to prepare you. Just like when I picked the Texans game and I said the Texans were going to lose and I picked the Texans were going to win and I picked the Packers game and I said the Packers were going to win. I got some flack. I got a lot of flack for saying the Texans were going to win, a lot, calling me a quitter and this and that. I do it because I try to be unbiased, but I also do it to prepare you so you're not as pissed as I used to be when I would hope and pray and think, oh, we got this, and then we don't. And it hurts more than if you were just like, hey, I don't think we're going to win, but if we do, fantastic. If they don't fire these guys, it's like we're going to have to sit here and wait and hope and pray for 3 weeks until that Black Monday. Where are they fired? They got to fire him. Regardless, Greer's got to go, and then McDaniel, he can be decided by somebody else. Tua Tagovailoa. I'm going to talk about him real quick. Tua Tagovailoa had a bad game yesterday, right? And I pointed it out. He had a bad game. I even said that his bad game yesterday is going to negate all the good he did this year because people are just going to focus on that. And that also pissed people off. How are you going to say that? I'm not saying that I'm going to do it. I'm saying that's the perception of the NFL. That's the perception of the media. That's the perception of outside fans. And that's the perception of some of our fans. All you're going to remember about this season is Tua Tagovailoa getting the concussion, missing those games and hurting the team, and then choking that Texans game. That's all you're going to remember. You're not going to remember the comeback victory against the Jets. You're not going to remember the great stretch where he didn't throw an interception for how many, I think it was like 200 and something completions. You're not going to remember any of the good he's done. You're just going to remember the Texans game, the injuries. That's it. And it's his own fault for putting himself in those situations. And a lot of what I hear is, you're paying this quarterback $50 million a year. He needs to play better. And that's something that I want to talk about, because you look at his contract. Now, his annual salary, I'm putting it in quotes because he's not getting paid $53.1 million a year. Like next year, he's getting like $39 million. And there's also like a clause that they have to decide before March if they're going to do this or that. I'm going to talk about that in the offseason. But that's fifth in the NFL behind Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, and Trevor Lawrence. I never look at the average annually because it means nothing. It's all about the guarantee and it's about the total contract. That's where it gets interesting. Tua Tagovailoa's total contract value is 12th in the NFL. He's not being paid top 5 money like people keep saying he is. He's being paid 12th in his total contract value. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, and Jordan Love all make more money than him in the total contract value. Tua is 12th in the NFL. And even if you want to look at his guaranteed money, he is 9th in the NFL. He is not making top 5 money. Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff are making more total guaranteed money than Tua Tagovailoa is. So I keep seeing like, oh, he should be making, more plays because he's a top 5 paid, or he's being paid in, top 10 or top. He's not. He's not. He actually signed a very team-friendly contract. There's a lot of stipulations in there. There's a lot of incentive based for him staying healthy. It's a fair contract. And again, I'm going to look at the nuances of it because I know there's an out there's a hard out in 2027, but there is an out after next year. But they have to decide on some things before March. There's a lot of stuff with his contract. But the Dolphins aren't stuck with him. And the Dolphins aren't really paying, they're not paying him top 5 money. Because again, his total contract value is 12th and his total guaranteed money is 9th. So we'll see how that all pans out. But this game from Tua, again, I talked about it. It's another year where we're like, ooh, we just need this to happen. And then he throws 3 interceptions. And I know people say, oh, quarterbacks aren't allowed to have bad games. No, quarterbacks are allowed to have bad games. I've showed you that against the 49ers, Patrick Mahomes had a horrible game. But that's not at the end of the year when we need him not to. That's when elite quarterbacks step up, like Patrick Mahomes, where they need Patrick Mahomes to get a touchdown, he's going to get the touchdown. They need Josh Allen to get a touchdown, he's going to get it with his feet. That's the difference between an elite quarterback and a good quarterback. Tua is a good quarterback. He's not that elite level, but to me, there's only 3 in the NFL. And to me, it's Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and it's Josh Allen. I don't even put Joe Burrow up there with elite because I feel like the year he went to the Super Bowl, he got carried by his defense. But that's my thoughts on that. Let's talk about players. Because now that, to me, the season's done, you're going to have some players that I think are going to go into business for themselves. You might also start to see a little bit of rumblings and tweets and reporters talking about their, locker room stuff and Mike McDaniel, yada, yada. You'll probably start to hear that crap happen. But you have players like Emmanuel Ogbah, who has the torn bicep. You have Tyreek Hill, who has the wrist injury. You have Teron Armstead with the knee injury. You have Chubb and Good, who are on the PUP. You have Kendall Lamb with the back injury. He didn't play. You have Jalen Waddle, who now sustained a knee injury. You have Raheem Mostert with the hip injury. I'm not saying all of these guys, but some of these guys might decide, we got 3 games left. We need a Hail Mary to make the playoffs. Even if we make the playoffs, you look how we're playing against, the Bills, and you look how we're playing against the Packers and the Texans, we're going to get destroyed in the playoffs. They might think like Emmanuel Ogbah might go get the surgery on his bicep. Like, there's no point in him continuing playing. Teron Armstead, he's probably going to be done. They'll probably put him on IR because, again, you need to see what you got out of Patrick Paul, and he's done. He's probably going to retire. Again, that also gives us cap space if that man decides to retire. Chubb and Good, they're not going to be activated. I'm calling it right now. They're just going to let the 21 days go. They'll let them practice a little bit here and there. They're not going to be activated because there's no point in activating them. Kendall Lamb, he might be done for the year. And Jalen Waddle might just hang it up with a knee injury. He might not try to push it, hurt himself anymore. But you got to also look, and I don't know, let me look up Jalen Waddle's contract and see if he has performance-based incentives in his contract. Because that's where you have these players thinking like, oh, I need to do this and that. Fully guaranteed, remaining roster bonus per game active bonus is 2025 to 2028. So no, his bonuses don't activate until next year. So Waddle's probably going to shut it down. Also, looking at Waddle's contract, he's getting $9 million this year, $8 million next year, and $11 million the year after that. Very good contract, and they can move on from him. It's a very good contract. So you might see those guys call it quits. You might see them say, I'm done. So before we get out of here, we will look at this. But again, it has nothing to do with playoffs. Because again, if we go quickly and pick the games where I think what will happen for the rest of the week, you'll see. Now, it depends if, Mahomes is playing or not. But I'll still go with that. You'll see that the Dolphins literally, the chances they have, right? I'm just going to have this because there's 2 weeks left. I'm not even going to do the whole flipping thing. They have no shot, man. They really have no shot. Which sucks. Really sucks. So let's say they win. I don't think they're going to win, but let's say they win. Boop and boop, right? So you're looking here and there's 2 weeks left. And the Dolphins would be 1 game behind the. The Dolphins are here, 2 weeks left. They would need the Colts to lose out, and then they would need the Chargers to lose out, or lose 1. Colts would need to because if the Dolphins lose 1, the Colts need to lose out or lose 1. And look who they're facing here. They're facing the Giants, and the Chargers are facing the Patriots. Boop boop. And the Dolphins win. Cool. We got 1 more week left. No. Because if they lose the final week, which they won't, because they're facing the Raiders, say they lose this game, Dolphins win this game, they lose this game, that's the only way they'll make the playoffs. But again, do you think the Colts are going to lose to the Jaguars? No. Think the Chargers are going to lose to the Raiders? No. So it don't matter. They're going to and then they're going to rest their starters. This is pretty much how it's going to pan out. Literally how it's going to pan out. And let's say this happens. This is it right here. I think this is your playoff standing for the AFC. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they'll face them. They'll beat them in Buffalo. They'll beat them, and I think they'll beat them. And then you'll have the Chiefs versus the Steelers, and you'll have the Bills versus the Ravens. That's going to be a good game, and I think the Ravens win that one, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. So, no. So, what would happen, and I did a situation where, again, in this situation, the Dolphins would be picking 14th. I did a situation where what would happen if the Dolphins lose out, they'd be picking 10th. So, I was like, realistically picking, like I wasn't like picking the Raiders and the Giants and the Browns and the Patriots and the Panthers to win to move us up. I realistically picked how I think it would fall with who losing what, and the Dolphins losing out, and we'd be picking 10th. So best case scenario, we pick 10th. Worst case scenario, we pick 14th. But if there's a player you want, quarterback you want, you can trade up. New GM. It all comes down to having a new GM. Hope you guys enjoy this. Thank you guys for sticking around. Thank you guys for still watching. I know this sucks. I know the season's over in my mind, but technically not over. I do appreciate you guys and girls still watching my videos and still watching the live streams and all that stuff, because I know it sucks to watch when it doesn't matter, but I'm still going to be doing this, and I'm still going to give you content, and it's now going to be focused more on the offseason, what the Dolphins can and can't do, and all that stuff. So I appreciate the heck out of all you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Like usual, stay classy. My fins up.